We've got Josh back today to present the meteorology as we enter the heart of our winter into spring flood season. Jeff will take us through our climatology, and I'll look at the extended forecast in this edition of the Southeast RFC's Water Resources Outlook.
So let's start off, as we always do, and look at the past precipitation. And we see, for the most part, near normal conditions across the southeast region. Some areas a little above normal and some slightly below, but no significant deviations from normal for the past 30 days. So let's look back 90 days now. And so this is roughly Christmas through the present time. And we see that the winter, as you probably have guessed, has been pretty wet for many areas of the southeast, especially from central Alabama there through North Georgia into the western Carolinas and Virginia. Some areas there in the dark blue and purple colors are in excess of 6 inches for the 90-day time frame. In other areas, such as the Florida Peninsula, coastal Carolinas there, and the upper Tom-Bigby watershed, precipitation has been closer to normal. So where has all the snow gone? Since our big storm in mid-February, most of the snow has melted, as you can see here. We had more than an inch of snow water equivalent with several basins of the Carolinas, but all that has been slowly melting out the last week or so and has kept stream flows within normal levels the past couple of weeks. So as of February 24th, we do not have any hydrologically significant snowpack here in the southeast. And so here are those normal stream flows. This is the 28-day average stream flows from the U.S. Geological Survey, and most are running within their 25 to 75 percentile in that green normal range. But with that being said, most are running probably more in that upper half of that range, more in that 50 to 75 percentile, as this winter has been pretty wet for the Carolinas, especially for the Carolinas into Georgia. Drought-wise, as you can guess, no drought and just a few small areas of dryness there in northern Alabama and down toward Mobile, Alabama. Drought, not a concern right now, and does not look like any concerns in the immediate future. So let's go to Josh with the weather outlook.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's begin with a short midterm outlook, which takes us through Monday, March 3rd. What we'll be dealing with the next couple of weeks is a split flow configuration aloft. In other words, we're going to have a northern branch to the jet stream, which will primarily stay to the north of our area, and a southern branch in the jet stream, which will primarily stay draped across our area through the period. So on February 25th, we're dealing with that split flow configuration and a very fairly zonal pattern, fairly fast pattern, nothing too amplified, which generally will mean weak systems if they come through our area. By the 27th, we're dealing with the first system, which will take the shape of a frontal boundary, which will first start off as a warm front working its way north across the southeast, and then as a cold front as the overall synoptic system sweeps through the area. And this will generally result in light precipitation with some maybe isolated moderate precipitation closer to the Gulf Coast. As we go through till March 1st, we're going to be dealing with yet another system, but again, a very weak system, and again, another warm frontal passage from the Gulf Coast working its way up into the interior of the southeast United States. Again, as the northern and southern branch generally stay uncoupled through the period. And finally, by March 3rd, the pattern starts to change a little bit where we have a more amplified southern branch of the jet stream with a trough coming in the central part of the United States, a ridge across the eastern part of the United States. And that will probably mean a fairly potent cold front will be working its way through the Midwest and portions of the eastern United States as we get towards the end of the midterm. What that means for us is a chance for more organized convection, possibly some strong or severe thunderstorms, and again, more widespread moderate precipitation across our area. So by the end of the period, that front will start to work its way through the Mid-South and start to enter Mississippi, Alabama, and maybe even portions of Georgia. So as we go through the midterm outlook, again, a flat pattern aloft will keep systems fairly weak and progressive. Now, as we go and analyze the total basin precipitation through March 3rd, you see that we're really just not dealing with a lot of widespread, moderate, or heavy rainfall. Even the heavy rainfall we might be expecting across portions of the southwest Alabama and western Florida Panhandle Gulf Coast is going to be fairly isolated in nature, and we do have lower confidence on that since one model is more aggressive than some of the other guidance that we've been looking at through this period. Again, weak and progressive systems are just going to keep our rainfall totals through the period fairly light. Now, as we go to the long-term outlook, again, still dealing with the northern branch and the southern branch of the jet stream. And again, as we saw on March 3rd, by March 4th, not much has changed. The southern branch will still dominate. and still be fairly impressive aloft. And for us, will be in a southwesterly flow. And so that typically means, especially this time of year, that we have the chance to have a frontal boundary that perhaps comes through and stalls in this kind of pattern, and then have waves of low pressure or waves of energy, shortwave energy that rides along that front to give us a prolonged period of light to moderate precipitation, which accumulates to heavy rainfall over a several-day period. Again, too far out to know for sure how this will all shape up, but the pattern suggests we might see more widespread moderate rainfall across our area. And by the 7th, not much has changed with that pattern. Again, generally a southwesterly flow aloft across the southeast United States, dominated by the southern branch. And by the 10th, the southern branch starts to flatten out, become a little bit more zonal, west to east, and that northern branch, more potent trough, starts to dig in from the north and west, which might mean another cold frontal passage, although perhaps a more progressive frontal passage by the end of the period. So the total precipitation through this period is a blend of both the European guidance and the American guidance at this time, suggesting that the best chances for heavy rainfall remain on the western side of our area and towards the Gulf Coast, with more moderate precipitation possible, especially across central Alabama extending into the coastal Carolinas. Bottom line, split flow, very difficult to predict this time of year, but based on climatology, it can lead to good rainfall if the two jets can phase at the right time.
Okay, thanks, Josh. So we are in the midst of the typical river flood period for the Southeast as we go into week 8 here. So the next 5 to 6 weeks will be the peak river flood period, typically for us here at Southeast River Forecast Center. This is the time when evapotranspiration is low and precipitation transitions a bit to be more convective as we head towards spring. This combination presents optimum runoff opportunities and thus river flooding.
Well, now that we've looked a little short-term and climatology on the forecast side, let's talk a little bit further into the future. And this is our ENSO predictions. And right now, our temperatures continue to stay a little bit cooler out in the Pacific. We still have neutral conditions, so no La Nina or El Nino, although we're getting close to La Nina the way that it's set up. But the models are hinting at it warming up in the Pacific, and that by the mid to late hurricane season, we may go into maybe a mild El Nino. And we'll see how that goes and how it affects hurricane season. But right now, it probably will not have much of an impact, and that we're looking at a more normal type prediction for the hurricane season as we get closer to that. As for our 1 month outlook, as Josh mentioned, we have an active jet stream. We've got a southerly jet and a northerly jet. The northerly jet tends to stay a little bit further north, so we should have continual rain. A little rain every few days or so, and more normal during this time of year. And again, climatologically, this is our wettest time of year, so we would expect to probably see some flooding during this time. Although it doesn't look excessive, it doesn't look like we're expecting above normal rain over the broad area. But again, in a normal season, we would expect some flooding during the month of March. As for the whole seasonal outlook, which is March through May, we do get to the Gulf Coast, where we've had a little bit of dryness, as Jeff mentioned before. Then it looks like we may continue to stay dry for that time period, and so that may deteriorate as we get further into the late spring season and early summer season, that we might start to see some hints of drought in that area. But as we move a little further north, we can see some above normal chances for precipitation in the Tennessee Valley, getting really close to our area, but not in our area. But it's kind of close. So again, equal chances looks about right. We're looking for a normal type springtime. So now let's take a look at our experimental long-range river flood outlook. This is available at the website you see at the bottom of your screen, and what it shows is our experimental long-range river flood outlook. And what we see is that there are more than a third of the sites showing greater than a 50% chance of at least minor flooding over the next 3 months, with 14 sites indicating a 50% chance of greater of significant flooding, meaning moderate to major. We can see areas where the river flood threat is greatest, such as the Tombigbee River, many of the lower-end coastal rivers in the Carolinas, as well as some of the headwater locations in North Georgia. For most of Alabama, the St. Johns River and the Central Florida River basins, most locations are showing less than a 50% chance of flooding. Now keep in mind, these forecasts are based on the Southeast RFC, ESP, our ensemble stream flow prediction, which are based on soil moisture states with our operational hydrologic models at our office, and then we run them through over many years of data, climatological data, to see if we're going to have flooding. And we also need to be prepared during this time because, as I mentioned before, this is our peak flooding season for the year. So now let's go a little bit further, and this goes May through July. And right now for precipitation during that time, there's nothing to lean us one way or the other. Looks like equal chances for above normal, near normal, or below normal precipitation during that time. And so we'll have to look for the hurricane season prediction and see if maybe we might see a little bit increased chances for rain based on that. And we'll talk about that as we get a little bit closer to hurricane season. So our bottom line, in the short term it looks like normal rainfall, which means the possibility of some flooding in the southeast based on our climatology. And that's just based on what Josh was saying, kind of what we're looking at for a normal type spring flood season. As for the long term, near normal, as we expect to exit winter and go into exit winter flood season and approach the tropical season. April becomes a time when things are a little bit quiet as we are in between seasons. That's when climatologically we have a little bit less rainfall and so forth, so it gets a little bit quiet, but then obviously it perks up again as we get into hurricane season. Our next Water Resources Outlook is scheduled to be recorded on March 12th. Thank you for listening to this Water Resources Outlook. Please remind your friends and colleagues that they can sign up for the Water Resources Outlook, the Southeast RFC Journal, and other valuable products at our website. Also, you can find us now on Facebook. Look for our next update in about 2 to 3 weeks.